Gauteng police this week bust yet another drug syndicate in Johannesburg. A drug lab was discovered in Douglasdale on Thursday. Drugs and processing equipment valued at approximately 80 million rand were found at the lab. Now, 2 suspects are in custody. It's a third discovery in recent weeks after a 300 million rand drug bust in Fourways and the 2 billion rand drug lab found in Douglasdale in Limpopo. Let's take a look at the increase of drug trafficking in South Africa with CEO of the Tobacco, Alcohol and Gambling Advisory Advocacy and Action Group, Peter Ucko. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika, and thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Miss. I got it all wrong. It's too early in the morning, Miss.
Thank you. It's very early in the morning. You are forgiven.
Thank you.
All right. So, Peter, first and foremost, why are we still so surprised about all of these drug busts as and when they happen?
I don't think we should be surprised. We should realize that there are international criminal syndicates around. We know that there's a little corruption in various levels of government and government services. We know that the gangs very often are fighting each other. So who knows if this drug bust in Douglasdale was in fact police work in its entirety, and that would have been excellent police work. But as the local Gauteng Police Commissioner said, that it was good investigative work, but maybe some other gang gave some inside information. Maybe it was some good citizen, and that's what we need. Citizens need to keep their eyes open. It's quite easy to recognize suspicious activity.
How easy? How easy? How can I recognize that my next door neighbor in an affluent northern suburb is a drug dealer?
Well, it's not so much a drug dealer. It's a matter of just noticing, you know how your neighbors and your friends and your children's school friends and their parents, and there's what we might recognize as normal routine behavior, going to the shops, going out to restaurants, taking kids to school. There's normal activity. When you see things happening that are apparently a little abnormal or unusual, like vehicles arriving or trucks arriving in the middle of the night, you don't know if they got chemicals on, very often missing number plates. There are ways that you can identify human behavior, and perhaps you should get an expert onto your show to talk about that, but recognizing human behavior which is normal and perhaps a little abnormal and suspicious. You can see that around filling stations, around shopping centers, where you recognize just the way someone is walking, the way they're looking around. That, and I'm not an expert in police work and human behavior and body language, but certainly there are ways that we as people just recognize what is unusual by seeing what is mostly usual.
And how prevalent is drug manufacturing or drug... well, you initially said that we can't necessarily always say that it is drug dealers, but how prevalent are the manufacturing of drugs in affluent areas in South Africa, such as what we've seen in Fourways recently?
Yes, certainly Fourways, and then we had Douglasdale, but the previous drug bust, which was worth, I can't remember, what, 2 billion rand or something like that, that was in a remote area in the middle almost of nowhere. Now, again, vigilant communities and vigilant police would have seen what they might call unusual activity. I mean, coal trucks along the Witbank Road are not unusual, but sometimes you might see something that's not regular. But as far as South Africa is concerned, look at the clampdown that's happened in South America. So where are the drug manufacturers, the criminal syndicates going to come in order to have an easier way to manufacture and to access, or we call it manufacturing, which is kind of formal way of calling it, but the drug dealers call it cooking.
Yeah, well, they use everyday over-the-counter products to cook these products, these drugs. Now, on Thursday morning, police executed a search warrant where they actually discovered that the premises were used to manufacture drugs. Now, chemicals used to manufacture drugs, including machinery and finished products, were found at the premises, and they were all confiscated to be used as exhibits. What chemicals are used to manufacture these drugs, Peter?
Well, I'm not going to go into the details of the chemicals because we don't want to make people clever about how to manufacture drugs. But
of course.
Certainly, the chemicals and the processes, we have weak borders. So we have too many possibilities for importing chemicals. Sometimes they're innocuous chemicals that, when they mix together correctly, can make very dangerous drugs. And it doesn't matter whether it's mandrax or things that, and in America right now, there's a big problem with fentanyl. That hasn't yet become a problem in South Africa, but crystal meth is a problem, and that's relatively easy to manufacture. So we need to tighten up all sorts of things like border controls, because many of the criminals that are here are illegal immigrants, undocumented criminals. So we need to tighten up all those things. I think social media has made it easier as well for people to communicate, I suppose very often by code. But in South America, there's been a big clampdown. So why don't they come to South Africa? It's quite easy to set up manufacturing here. And I think there, if you look at the machinery, it's very often very sophisticated machinery, the sorts that the pharmaceutical manufacturers would use. So why would, let's say, Peter Ucko bought a sophisticated pill manufacturing machine? That should raise many questions. So if John Citizen, somebody who lives down the road or in Cape Town or Durban, it doesn't matter, suddenly buys a pill manufacturing machine, we should ask questions. So it's not only the police work who might come across intelligence and execute a drug bust, but ask the importers, the import units, I say, within government, and the suppliers of machinery should be asking, why does this guy want a sophisticated pill manufacturer or a sophisticated mixing machine? Because mixing machines very often have techniques. It's the same with paint, and it's quite simple. It's the same with paint, so that you don't get air mixed into the product.
What should one do upon suspicion that your neighbor is in fact manufacturing drugs?
Well, the simple answer to that is to go to the police, but we have to raise questions all the time about how trustworthy the lower levels of police work are. Do you go to the local police station? I would suggest, for example, go to Commercial Crimes Unit, go to the Hawks, the Special Investigations Unit, those people, and get to a higher level officer where you are likely to be more safe and with more knowledge that the information that you're going to give is protected and well used. You don't want to get into the information you've given to be incorrectly used or hidden away, or to place your own life in danger. So go to the higher or highest levels even, your local police commissioner in your province, wherever it is. But be cautious, because you don't want to get mixed up in this. Drug cartels are very, very easy and quickly likely to kill anyone. We've seen it happen with whistleblowers, for example.
Right.
But go to the highest levels would be my advice, not to the local police station.
Thank you so much.
The specialized units or the highest level of people. And, you know, what I'm hoping is that this little conversation that we're having might result not in these big spectacular drug busts of 2 billion and 80 million rand. If we just end up starting a process where we can save one life, that will be the magic of today's discussion. Just one life saved, and then another and another and another, and break the cycle.
We'll leave it right there. Thank you so much, Peter. That was the CEO of the Tobacco, Alcohol and Gambling Advisory Advocacy and Action Group, Peter Ucko.